Right, good evening. Welcome. So, I'll just explain what we're going to discuss today. As you can probably guess, it's basically the situation the Conservative Party find them in. Boris Johnson, I thought in December, I've got a video coming out tomorrow actually to go through all the details, but in December, it was fairly obvious he couldn't carry on till the next election. Now, it's just all out in the open. Steve Baker, who's been referenced there, has many people may not know who he is. He hides in the shadows a bit, but he is arguably the most influential backbencher, and he was instrumental in bringing down Theresa May, for example. He was instrumental in getting Brexit done in the first place effectively. The referendum, in all likelihood, would not have ever been. David Cameron would never have been forced to put it on the manifesto were it not for Steve Baker. If you look at some of the other prominent Brexiteers that worked with him in the so-called Star Chamber of the ERG, none of them had the nous to be able to achieve this. So when he stands up in Parliament and says that Boris Johnson should be long gone, and not just that, not for any vague reasons either, he says he did not obey the spirit or letter of the law, and he also made clear that he thinks Boris Johnson has lied to Parliament. And also, Steve Baker basically strongly hinted in an interview yesterday or the day before that he has submitted his letter of no confidence. So, the audio is a bit boxy. Right, okay. Very quickly then. The audio, people were saying the audio was only coming out of one channel, so I ticked a button, it should be coming out of both. But the thing is, it comes through in a single channel, so I'm copying one to the other. So we'll go through some of these. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to go, and I've clipped some questions that people asked just before the stream started, or statements. I'm going to go through the ones that are relevant to this topic for at least the first half of the video. And the topic is basically the position Conservative MPs find themselves in as to when exactly they can get rid of Boris Johnson. What is the trigger? What happens? Any other questions, channel related or politics related, will be more of a free-for-all for the second half of the video. The reason I do this is for people watching it not live, they probably don't want to jump between lots of different topics, and also I can't keep up either. So there was a question there. So Tilly, how was the process when Baker turned against May, and did it take long before she left when he called for her to resign? Curious to know about how he created the downfall for May. It did take a while, in actual fact. Basically, it goes right back to August, probably maybe September 2018. And she didn't resign until May 2019. It was all to do with the Chequers Agreement. So Theresa May, for a couple of years, had been going on, and Brexit was very nebulous. No one really knew what it wanted. And Theresa May said, "Well, Brexit means Brexit," and which was basically a way of shutting everyone up. So everyone going, "Oh yeah, of course, Brexit means the thing I think Brexit means." Obviously, there are a million Brexits or possible Brexits. So she just kept saying that, so everyone thought they were going to get what they wanted. Then, round about August 2018, she had to deliver what Brexit actually meant to her party, the so-called Chequers meeting. And some people didn't like what they heard. So Steve Baker basically pushed very hard. David Davis resigned. Boris Johnson had to resign as well. And it caused a real schism. Very famously then, at the end of 2018, Theresa May faced a vote of no confidence, which she won on, but she wasn't going to win. She won on the basis of promising MPs that she would leave, she would resign as soon as the UK left the EU. She says, "I'm going to take us out of the EU and then I'll leave." But of course she didn't, because her withdrawal agreement was not accepted by the wider party. But Steve Baker, you've got to consider at the moment, Steve Baker, at the moment, he is not chair of the ERG, the European Research Group, basically the anti-Brexit, the party within the Conservative Party. There's about 100 MPs in that, it's believed. He's not the chair at the moment because he stood down. But at the same time, everyone believes he is the most influential member of it. But he also leads the net zero group, you're the ones that, against the net zero, not in favour of it, and also like the COVID scrutiny group as well. So basically he leads all the what a former Tory party chairman used to describe as the swivel-eyed loons. They're now in charge of the party. So I'll go through some other little questions as well. So it says, so in terms of, okay, the police investigation is probably a good one to look at as well in terms of where we are with this. So we have a situation, so Mike was asking, how will the length of the police investigation impact the news cycle on this? And there's two questions about the police. So at the moment, the police have issued some more fines, but they're not saying, they're not updating about it. They're not saying, yeah, we've given a load of fines out for this because of purdah. Now, purdah is like the period, a couple of weeks just before an election, and there are elections in a couple of weeks, where you have to be careful that you don't do or say anything that could influence the election. Okay, and that applies to the police as well, although it's a little bit, it's more guidance than law. Now, some people are saying this is outrageous because withholding that information could also influence the election. My view on that is it's fine, it's okay. Reason being that the police don't normally update. Like, if the police were stopping the investigation right now, that would be weird. That would be, there's no reason to do that. But they're not. They are still investigating. They are still issuing fines. They're just not telling the public that they have issued more fines. Which is okay, because the police don't normally do that anyway. That's normal policing. Like, if someone down the street was issued a fine, they wouldn't announce that publicly either, usually. So I'm actually okay with the police not updating. The bottom line is, reading between the lines, we know that Boris Johnson has received at least one more fine. They're not saying, but we know in all probability, like say 95, I won't even say 99, we'll say 95% certain that Boris Johnson has received another fine or is about to. But in terms of how long the investigation still has to run, it could be over. It could be that very soon after the local elections that they say it's pretty much done now. So it could be by the end of May it's all done and dusted. Then the Privileges Committee can start its work. It could be that it's still not over for several more months. And that's what I meant when I talked about it in the video when I discussed it. The Privileges Committee investigation could run for a very long time because we do not even know when it starts. But anyway, aside from his influence, was Baker a typical Brexiteer in his thinking? He is one of the ideological Brexiteers. Now, with Steve Baker also, it's quite clear there are also people, he's acting as an agent for some people. So he's also acting in some people's interest. But Steve Baker ultimately is an ideologue. You know, he's someone who has a certain set of principles. I would describe them as warped principles, but he sticks very strongly to them. Which means he's the total opposite of Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson has no principles, not even political philosophies. So he will go into a room and say a thing to those people about, oh yeah, we're totally going to do this. He'll go into another room with a different group of people and say the opposite. He will just say whatever he thinks people want to hear, as long as they give him power. Nico, thanks very much. It says, how's Johnson law changing going so he can crown himself king in autumn? Not very well. It seems clear that the Conservatives are going to get rid of Boris Johnson now. In fact, there was a question that might link into here as well. Says, this Parcel Road was saying, are the Tories doomed to forever say it's not the right time to drop Johnson? I'm inclined to think he will likely hobble on damage rather than lose a confidence vote. There are two possible outcomes here. First of all, let's be clear, Conservative MPs have already decided to drop Boris Johnson. The reason we know that is because they wouldn't support him in the vote on Thursday. Now, yes, if MPs had voted to stop that investigation, it would have looked very bad in their constituencies. But by letting it go through, what has happened? It's now certain that Boris Johnson has to go. The Privileges Committee cannot realistically let Boris Johnson off the hook. He has he has lied to Parliament. He has undoubtedly lied to Parliament, not just by not telling the truth, but the fact when it became clear he had, because remember in Parliament he said there were no parties in Downing Street. Now at some point it became obvious that there were parties in Downing Street, and even Boris Johnson had to accept it, but he did not come to the House of Commons and correct the record until this week. But we have known, and I mean known, at least since the first draft of the Gray report came out, that there were parties in Downing Street, because she has said so. When Sue Gray's report came out, it was like 2 months ago. Well, it was in February. It said there were parties in Downing Street. At that point, if Boris Johnson was going to try and claim he hadn't deliberately misled the House, he had to come to the House and Commons and correct the record, and he didn't. So there is no two ways about it. He has breached the never mind the ministerial code, it's clear he's breached that. He has breached the House of Commons standards, the rules, Erskine May as it's called. There is no way the Privileges Committee can possibly find anything other than that Boris Johnson has fallen foul of those rules. It has to also then mean a punishment is recommended. What punishment? If Owen Paterson got a suspension of like 15 days, at least, wasn't it? It was a good long suspension. How could they suspend Boris Johnson for less than 10 days? 10 days is the trigger. If he is suspended for 10 days, recall petition. The recall petition will easily pass. It only needs 10% of voters in his constituency, and then he's not an MP. He's sacked as an MP. And it doesn't matter if he stands in the by-election that will result, because that'll be 2 or 3 months later. They'll probably try and hurry it up and get it in like a month and a half or something. Doesn't matter even if he wins it, and that'll be far from certain. Very likely won't win it, I would say. But, you know, even if he does, they can't let it go on. They can't. So by letting this investigation go on, Tory MPs expect the Privileges Committee to find him guilty. They expect them to recommend a suspension of at least 10 days. Those MPs in theory could then block that suspension. They won't. It would have been less damaging to block the whole investigation than to block the punishment. So Tory MPs have now decided it's time for him to go. The only question is, will they get rid of him before the Privileges Committee finishes its investigation? Or are they just waiting for the Privileges Commission to say he is guilty so that then he goes and no one has to look like they were the one wielding the knife, apart from maybe the MPs in the Privileges Committee? So that's the situation there in terms of, you know, because this is the problem. I mean, Tory MPs, the trap that they're in, and this is what we, you know, ideally like to discuss, the trap that they are in at the moment is they know they cannot continue with Boris Johnson. They've now made it clear that they really do understand he cannot lead them into the next election. He can't. This isn't going to blow up. If they thought it was going to blow over, they would have blocked the investigation. They don't think it's going to blow over. But the problem is this. Who do you get in place? Was there someone else asking here? Northern Lad was saying, I'm just hoping the Tory backbenchers grow a spine and get rid of this excuse for PM, but who would replace him? Please not Dippy Liz Truss. Now, that is the problem, isn't it? Who do you replace him with? I mean, we can go through some of them. You know, Liz Truss might well win. If she gets on the ballot, members could well vote for her. She's an idiot. An absolute idiot. Tory MPs must know that. I don't think the majority want to risk Liz Truss ending up as their leader. Dominic Raab, you've got to be joking. Not only is he even thicker than Liz Truss, much more so, by the way. Liz Truss is not even in the bottom half, but ranked by brains of the cabinet. But he's actually been tested. He's actually had to do PMQs across from Keir Starmer, across from Angela Rayner. And he has been stitched up every time. He's hopeless. Absolutely hopeless. Jeremy Hunt, Daniel said there, Jeremy Hunt is the sensible choice. Tory MPs will look at him as a much better Prime Minister. In fact, they'll look at him as a credible Prime Minister, right? But two problems with Jeremy Hunt. First of all, he was He was never the committed Brexiteer, even though he's had to nail his colours to the mast and say, yeah, I'm totally fine, totally going to go along with Boris Johnson's Brexit deal in order to have been allowed to still be an MP. He's not. They know he's not. He won't tear up the Northern Ireland Protocol. He's far too sensible to do that. So there's the headbangers in the Tory parliamentary party won't go along with him. But at the same time, even if they can be outnumbered, is he really going to appeal? Is he someone who can wield the populist bandwagon to appeal to those people in the Red Wall and win them back? Probably not. He's a typical old-fashioned conservative. He's not really going to appeal to those people. You know, Rishi Sunak has blown it now. Rishi Sunak, his reputation's down the toilet. Desmond Swain. Oh, that'd be funny. I don't think even Desmond Swain would put his hat into the ring. But, you know, it is incredible. It's incredible to go through the list of possibles. I mean, Steve Baker himself. You know, would Steve Baker himself stand? Maybe. Again, would he appeal to those people? I don't think so. It's very difficult to say because he has typically been one of those who likes to be in the shadows, pulling the strings from behind the throne. So it's very difficult to know how he would behave thrust into the limelight. Remember, he's got no front bench experience. He has been a minister, but he hasn't been a cabinet minister. I think I'm right in saying that. So he hasn't had really proper front bench experience. So it's very difficult to know what he'd be like. But I find it very difficult to believe that he'd have much popular support. Plus, his own seat is in serious jeopardy. I think I said in a video from the Lib Dems, actually, it's Labour. So Labour could actually take his seat at the next election. In fact, at the moment, the polls would suggest they would. Would you really go for a leader who might lose their seat at the next election? You probably don't want to go for a leader in a marginal constituency. Because even if you won the election, your leader is not an MP, very messy. There's all sorts of reasons not to go for Steve Baker. And again, he's very divisive. He'll represent one very powerful faction in the party, but piss off the other. So he's not going to be a healer. You know, probably what they want is someone who can pretend to be the healer leader, the ones who brings people together. Won't work. Theresa May was that. That didn't work, did it? But Michael Fabricant, I don't think you spelt Michael Fabricant right there, you see. Even he knows he's no. The other serious one being discussed is Penny Mordaunt. Again, she could potentially be an inoffensive compromise candidate. But again, it's very difficult to know exactly what she'd be like because she has been, up until now, if you wanted to be charitable, you'll call her a team player. You know, she's been one who has backed whoever has been the leader. She hasn't been involved in skullduggery. If you wanted to be less charitable, you could say she's a sycophant. You know, who was perfectly happy to go along with whatever David Cameron, Theresa May or Boris Johnson have done. Just for, you know, professional ambition. So you don't really know what she would be like as a leader. It may well be that she's not even seen as a leader. I don't know. Ben Wallace has come up. Ben Wallace would again be a sensible one. But again, look at it this way. Because Ben Wallace is genuinely competent. When people say, oh, Boris Johnson, he's done well over Ukraine, hasn't he? It's like, no, he hasn't. From the military point of view, our support for Ukraine has been good. I haven't seen any real criticism of it. What's that down to? Ben Wallace. If it was down to Boris Johnson, we'd be getting all the bases covered. Our humanitarian response and our economic response has been poor. It's only the military response that's been good because the Defence Secretary is good. So Ben Wallace is genuinely competent. But ask yourself this, when you look at the cabinet, why are there not very many competent cabinet ministers? The reason is Boris Johnson does not want to promote anyone who could challenge him. He wants loyal cabinet members who will not outshine him. But Ben Wallace is competent, but he doesn't have much of a personality. A lot of people don't even know who he is. Ask people on the street. even Conservative voters, even Conservative Party members, some may not know who Ben Wallace is. So it's really, if he hasn't even got the personality to outshine Boris Johnson, therefore he can be allowed as a competent minister in the cabinet, is he really going to have the personality to win over the Red Wall again? No. I mean, whoever you look at, it's like, who is there that could appeal in the same way that Boris Johnson could? It's incredibly difficult. There are not much decent Conservatives left. They're all cleansed by the party in 2019 in the shadows of no deal Brexit. Well, I mean, that is another point as well in terms of, you know, would Jeremy Hunt realistically win? He obviously came second last time, and he wasn't easily beaten by Johnson either. He got about 40% of the votes when it went out to the wider membership, which is, you know, that wasn't a runaway victory for Johnson. That was a 3-2 victory. And it wasn't because Boris Johnson impressed them. They just believed that he was the one to win the election, and they were right. But it is also true to say that a lot of the Conservatives that are like Jeremy Hunt and would naturally ally with him were purged from the parliamentary party. So what we have in the Tory parliamentary party at the moment is a much higher proportion of hardline Brexiteers, as well as the new crop who are now more experienced than they were, but are still only got 2.5 years of parliamentary experience. That's not very much. And a lot of them clearly don't know their history. So they don't know. They've never really watched properly the rise and fall of various political leaders. So they don't know what's going on. Matt Hancock? No. How's he going to win the public over? Because the thing is, look at it this way as well. Why is Boris Johnson now falling? It's not because he's been a crap prime minister. It's not because he hasn't actually delivered anything. Ultimately, it's because he broke those COVID laws, right? So did Matt Hancock. So did Rishi Sunak. So they have no chance, because why? When you know that the reason Boris Johnson is having to go is because he broke those laws and the public won't stand for it, you obviously would not then choose a leader who also broke those laws. Just because a lot of people aren't talking about Rishi Sunak and Matt Hancock at the moment, it's only because nobody's taking them seriously as credible leaders. You know, if they were, the focus would come straight back onto them as well. Don't forget, Hunt has a history, dodgy finances and screwed over the junior doctors. Well, he's a Tory MP. You know, but I mean, if you think again, if you try and think of it, you know, and this is the difficulty for Tory MPs when you say, well, why? Because the rational time, and I'm going to say in my video tomorrow, the rational time to have got rid of Boris Johnson was last December. That was the time to get rid of him, and they would have got an instant bounce back in the polls. All of the blame would have gone on Boris Johnson. There would have been no need for the Sue Gray report. Wouldn't have happened. The Met Police investigation wouldn't have happened. If they'd have got rid of Boris Johnson back in December, none of this would have then happened. The Sue Gray investigation, no need for it. Met Police investigation, no need for it. The Privileges Committee investigation, no need for it. There would have been no need for it. Boris Johnson would have taken the full blame. The Conservatives would have looked like they were principled because they were getting rid of a leader who didn't follow his own rules. And they'd have got a bounce back in the polls. That's gone now. You know, the horse has bolted. No good closing that stable door. But put yourself in the position of a Tory MP. You're in the position you are now. So just imagine that you're a Tory MP. Don't steal anyone's pension or sell a hospital or anything. Just imagine. What would you do? What are you doing right now? Because you still got the problem of you're not going to get that instant, because now the Conservative Party are treated with suspicion. So even when they get rid of him, I expect a little bit of readjustment in the polls, but I don't expect a big bounce back. You know, so what are they going to do? Who are they going to replace him with? All of these problems are going around their heads at the moment. No need for the Met investigation. If you break the law and you're not the PM. Well, there wasn't one, was there? I'm not suggesting that there shouldn't have been a Met investigation. I'm saying that there wasn't. The Met did not choose to investigate until Sue Gray's report was about to come out. It was 2 days before Sue Gray's report was ready for publication that the Met suddenly said, oh, we should have an investigation here, I think. They should have investigated several months earlier. They should have investigated as soon as the evidence was being presented in the media. Quite frankly, they knew what was going on before. They've got police officers stationed outside the bloody place. But so it's not that there shouldn't have been an investigation. It's that if they got rid of Boris Johnson last December, there wouldn't have been. There'd have been no reason for it. Let's have a look. But anyway, I've worked with a graphic designer to design an anti-Tory poster featuring reclining mugs based on a spoof of Labour Isn't Working, how to use it and who to pass it to. Just like share it on social media with a lot of people who are likely to retweet it with a lot of followers. That's usually the easy way to do that. Someone's suggesting Ruth Davison. She's not an MP anymore. She's in the House of Lords. I don't think they'll go down that route. Was there any other questions that people asked quite early on that I thought were potentially needing to come up? Pastor Roger, I think, saying again, I don't believe the opposition party should push too hard to get Johnson out just to damage him so they can win elections easier. The thing is, like, it's one of those things. Is Boris Johnson, if Boris Johnson were to lead the Conservatives into the next election, would that be a good outcome for Labour? Yes, of course. Boris Johnson's reputation is completely shot now. The public do not trust him. Doesn't matter how fancy his promises are, they do not believe them. But for that reason, they never would do. The danger, because I've said this for a while, given that Boris Johnson has to go, he has to go soon. The sooner the better. The problem with leaving it is the Conservatives would ideally like to get rid of Boris Johnson and then have a general election 6 months later. You get the new guy in, the new guy looks squeaky clean. So someone like Jeremy Hunt, ideal in many ways. They promised to clean it all up. They were never part of it. They're not tainted by any of the Partygate or any of those issues. They also were back where he was a senior minister back when the Conservative Party still had credibility in the public. Perfect fit in many ways. A perfect fit, totally untainted by Johnson, and harkens back to when people can say they were making the right decisions with their vote. So yeah, and then you go into the general election 6 months later. There hasn't been time for Labour to really, not many people know much about Jeremy Hunt. They've forgotten, because although he was a senior minister, they've forgotten all the crap that went with it. And it'll take Labour a while to put the spotlight on him. I mean, it's taken them 2.5 bloody years to track Boris Johnson. So they need more than 6 months to deal with him. So that's the problem. So what you want to get rid of Boris Johnson this summer, stay ahead in the poll so that they daren't trigger a general election, make sure that general election's in 2024, where you've got a good couple of years, maybe even 2.5 years, but certainly a good couple of years to work on the new leader and trash their reputation as well. Tilla, thanks very much. Says, I think Johnson will call a general election. After all, that's been or being kicked out, and it's either that or being kicked out in disgrace. Well, that's an interesting point. I did sort of wonder the same thing myself. I remember in a video maybe a couple of weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago, because the Fixed Terms Parliament Act has now been removed. I did think to myself, if it gets time and Boris Johnson's getting the tap on the shoulder, might he just threaten to call a general election? Because there is now nothing really to stop him, is there? He could. It's now within the gift of the Prime Minister to ask the Queen to suspend Parliament and trigger a general election. Because MPs, I thought foolishly, voted to get rid of the Fixed Terms Parliament Act, which would have meant he couldn't have done that. He would have needed their say-so. Also, we are coming up to a natural break in Parliament. So we talked about the illegal prorogation of Parliament in 2019. It was then lawfully prorogued for the general election. But you do have different sessions of Parliament within a parliamentary cycle. And we are coming up to it likely being a prorogation of Parliament, a legal one, perfectly fine, in this autumn. it might well be that if Johnson feels the heat, he may not trigger a general election, but because he'll just lose his own seat then anyway. He's not going to be Prime Minister very much longer then. That is what you call mutually assured destruction in political terms. You know, so he doesn't want a general. He might threaten it, I suppose, as a kamikaze act, but he could just prorogue Parliament, new session, and it'll be the, you know, after summer it'll be naturally time for a new session. Give himself some time. Mike is saying, I can't do another 2 years of this. We're going to have... The thing is, there is nothing that can force a general election. The Conservatives have way too high a majority. They are not going to call an early general election unless they think they will win it. They don't have to think they will win it by as big a margin. They don't need as big a margin. The majority that they have at the moment is way bigger than is necessary. You know, 20, 30 seat majority is fine for Conservatives. Arguably, Labour always need a larger majority because they have more rebels. So, yeah, it's... Anyway, I forgot my train of thought. Let's pick up a question. Johnson is one of those people who would burn everything down if he cannot have it. Might be his final revenge for forcing Tories into a general election. Yes, I can see it as a kamikaze act. Unless, of course, some people have something on Johnson and they persuade him not to do that. It is possible. But yeah, I have wondered that myself. You know, would he do that? But I think there are less extreme things he can do, first of all. Tim Elwell throwing Tom Tugendhat hat into the ring there. Again, pros of Tom Tugendhat is he's not tainted by Boris Johnson. He can easily be seen as principled because he's taken a stand against this law breaking from the start. Veteran is always good. But he doesn't have frontline experience. He doesn't have front bench experience. He's a total unknown. You would be basically, it's like a lucky dip Prime Minister. So for Tory MPs to put his name on the ballot, let alone for the wider membership to vote for him, I think, I'm not sure that Conservative members would vote for him. I'd be very doubtful if Conservative MPs would let him be on the ballot. Because imagine who'd be on the ballot with. Let's say he's on the ballot with Liz Truss. Would they really think that the members will vote for Tugendhat over Liz Truss? I'm not sure. Metaphora, thank you very much. Says, is Rishi Sunak done for? Can he lie low and recover from his tax scandals and Partygate fine by 2024? No, he's done. He should have gone before. He should have got. There were several. He really needed to go before the spring budget. Do you know what should have happened? As soon as the police investigation was heating up before the spring budget, he should have resigned. Do you know what he should have done? He should have written a letter saying, you know, because obviously he's been fined. So he was in the tenders. As soon as it was reported that he was at that birthday party, he should have just written a letter that says, at the time, yeah, I was there. And at the time, I didn't believe I was doing anything wrong. He should use the Boris Johnson defence, but with a bit more credibility. Because what he should have done was to say, I didn't really feel that we were doing anything wrong at the time, but on reflection, I can see that it was unwise. I therefore think it's appropriate to step down and have a period of reflection on the backbenchers. So then what he could have done, he's made a principled resignation. He hasn't had to give that spring budget, which is what's basically finished him, never mind the fine. Goes to the backbenchers. He receives his fine, but do you know what? People don't make a big thing about it because he's already said, you know, I don't think I should have been there. I didn't think I was doing anything wrong at the time. You know, he has his period of reflection. Boris Johnson 6 months later is forced out. Then he decides to throw his hat in the ring and he says, right, I've come back a better person. Now, I'm not saying that would work, but it would have given him a chance. He's gone. His chance has gone now. Finished. His popularity is down the tubes because that's ultimately the problem. The reason why he has supporters in Parliament largely is because he became the most popular MP in the country, in the UK. Largely as a result of the furlough scheme, which wasn't his idea. But at the same time, he did, you know, he went with it. That's fine. So, yeah, it's absolute. The political naivety. it's complete political naivety. He hasn't been an MP for very many years, but that's the case with quite a lot of the frontline MPs now. There's quite a few of them that have not been MPs for. Keir Starmer came into Parliament at the same time as Rishi Sunak. It's a bit worrying that. If Rishi Sunak had become the leader, you'd have both the leader of the Conservative Party and the leader of the Labour Party who'd only actually been an MP for 7 years, which to me sounds a bit ridiculous. But anyway, Rishi, no tax, no one going to vote for that, even if he did feed the furlough bunch through coronavirus. Well, that's the thing now, you know, and people generally in this country as well don't really vote as a reward. They vote for what you're going to give them next. The furlough scheme, he's used that credit. At the end of the day, they're not going to give him credit for that. It's like, well, you know, but you've then given us this really tough time since. If you pay for Super Chat, does it go to Phil or Zuckerberg? It's got nothing to do with Zuckerberg. he's Facebook. I think 70% to me, 30% to YouTube. I understand. Except, of course, I mean, these Super Chats, I'll just sort of say really quickly, because we are now past the halfway point. We could do a bit more of a free-for-all. So they're only here for this month. Remember, after the end of this month, the streams are going to change a bit. I'm going to open out the memberships on the 1st of May, which is a Sunday, a week tomorrow. And then the streams will work a little bit different. Basically, it'll be the Saturday one will still be publicly viewable, but only members will be able to type in it. That'll hopefully keep it down a little bit. Maybe. Don't know. And then there'll be an extra one for the upper tier of members midweek, which won't be publicly viewable. And then once a month, my aim is to have Super Chats on fully public once a month to raise money. So none of it will go to me. Whatever I get will go to what seems to be a suitable charity. I'm guessing an international humanitarian charity is likely to be the choice for the next few months. On just the channel notes, I will just bring one up as well. There are a few people that said this. Aaron, if you're still on, says, can we get the morning video back? I used to listen to it when I drink my morning coffee, really miss it. Suggestion 6 a.m, 6 p.m. So you can also make a video for the same date. Now, okay. Oh, Darren, thank you very much. Right, unfortunately not. I will explain why. Let me get rid of something. Where is it? Don't know. Is it this one? Get rid of that. Right, so the reason I did it, really it's something I've known I sort of needed to do for a while. And but as things were going along, it's one of those things, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, which is still not a great position to be in. Now, these are my views per day for 2022. So it starts off on the 1st of January, it goes, then what happened, it sort of went, I don't know if actually even know if the cursor's visible on this, probably not. But it sort of went down. Well, it went down here, first of all, if you can even see the cursor, probably not. Mid-February. Now, we know why that is. That is because that's when Putin started his argy-bargy. Then it went up a bit, because I did a few videos on the Ukraine crisis, which were very topical. But I'm not going to do a lot of them, because they don't, you know, if there's something I think that's worth talking about, yes, but that's not going to be that often. So then, obviously, the views went down. I'm not, you know, so things. So then I looked at the situation. I knew that the views would go up if I put videos out when most people were on YouTube watching the channel. And then this is what has happened in the last week. So that's what the views per day has done. And I sort of knew it. Okay, I don't expect it to stay that high, because that, I think there's a perfect storm situation going on, because as well as the fact I've now changed it so that videos come out when people are online, and I'll explain why that's important in a moment. There's obviously been the big issue of the Boris Johnson mess this week, which has heightened interest in that story. But nonetheless, it has gone up. And the reason is, the way it works on YouTube, you put a video out and the algorithm shows it to some people they think might be interested in it. and people will see it in their feed and they'll either click on it or they won't. If a lot of people click on it, the algorithm looks at it each hour. So in the first hour it goes, a load of people watch this video. So in the second hour it recommends it to a load. If it does really well, it recommends it to a load more. And it keeps going up like that. If a load of people don't watch it, it goes, people aren't interested in this video, so it doesn't recommend it to very many. So the problem with the 6 a.m. one is that hardly anyone is online. And I don't mean in YouTube generally. I mean, I get on the analytics, my specific, in fact, can I bring it up again? Hold on. My specific, if I can find it, there it is, viewers. So it says when your viewers are on YouTube, 6, and it is coded, so very light means no bugger. 6 a.m, no bugger is online. 12 noon, decent number are online. So that's why going between the 6 a.m. and the 6 p.m. wouldn't work as well. And then 5 p.m, loads of people. And the thing is, you don't want to do it too late either, because the problem is if you do it later, yes, there's still loads on, but then when it recommends it to the second hour and the third hour, it doesn't have the run through. So you actually want to bring it out at the start of when there's crap loads of people on. So, and creeping on, out there saying, funny, I went online because I knew videos are published. Well, yeah, that is a reason why you should be consistent with uploads and have a consistent time for them. Absolutely. And I've now changed that time. But that's another thing as well. I've changed the time, and yet I've still got loads more views. So it's, at the moment it's inconsistent. It is going to be consistent. People are going to expect that at some point. But it just shows you the difference that has made. And I sort of knew it would, and I've known for a long time it would boost views. It's just that the views were doing fine. But obviously, when you get yourself into a situation, you're doing this full time and you think, oh, I quite like this. This is all right. You know, you shout at the internet for a living, not bad. When you see your views go down, you don't want to be glib about it. You know, I've been on YouTube long enough to see people do well on a channel and then it all just disappears overnight. So I will have to prioritize making sure the channel still gets lots of views. But anyway, we can get back to some politics. I'm watching less since you changed. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm not going to come out with a glib thing as well and say, well, I bring one out. The one I bring out at 5 p.m. would have been the one that would come out 6 a.m. the next day. And you could just watch it then. I know that's not realistically what's going to happen, but it is. That's the reason I had to do it. It is having a massive impact. I held off for a long time because I knew that some people wouldn't necessarily be happy, because I had broached the subject before, but at the same time, when your views are going down, and it was going down a lot, the impact was huge. You don't want to get down on a slippery sliding slope, because then it's much harder to correct. But anyway, right, Tilly, thank you. It says, do you think the next PM will be left or right wing? Well, right wing, it'll be a Conservative PM. Will you think the Tories will target transgender people at the next election? No. Will Starmer strengthen unions? Inevitably, because by definition, employment laws will be strengthened, which always strengthens the unions. But yeah, it's but I mean, it's really this simple. I mean, all Conservatives are right wing. Labour, I mean, some may be very central. There are going to be some MPs, of course. There are going to be some Tory MPs and Labour MPs that, under slightly different circumstances, could move from one party to the other. Obviously, we had, ironically, a fellow called Wakefield cross the floor from the Conservative Party to Labour. I don't know how genuine that is. You can get a little bit of that, because you do get centrists who could appeal for either. And it could be argued that centrists at the moment wouldn't really appeal, you know, the Conservative Party wouldn't appeal to them because they're quite far to the right, just like Labour wouldn't have appealed to them under Jeremy Corbyn because it was very far to the left. So Keir Starmer has moved it more towards the centre, which is where the voters are. But and he will move it more so come the election, because you have to, that's where the voters are. But but yeah, in terms of will they target transgender people, no. Even though they're trying to make a culture war issue out of trans issues, they know that it is not a voting. It's not something people base their vote on. Apart from people who are most directly affected potentially, but those people are very tiny number of it. Even in a single constituency, too small a number to realistically swing it, unless it was literally down to 1 or 2. And the Conservatives know full well they're not going to attract the trans vote, realistically. Robot, thank you as well. It says, RE donations to non-profits, media literacy and or media watchdog orgs. And thanks for all that. Okay. Despite their preference of leaders over lawyers, oh yeah, Boris Johnson did use that phrase, didn't he? That was probably a very foolish thing to say. For a man like Boris Johnson, who regularly breaks the law, I cannot understand why both he and Priti Patel keep bashing lawyers when they must need them on a regular basis. But anyway, despite their preference of leaders over lawyers, given the growing popularity and respect of Starmer, will Tories replace Johnson with a Starmer clone? No, I think that would be fatal as well. At the end of the day, they know what Starmer's weakness is. He doesn't have that strong personality. That charisma that, as I say, comes across to millions of people who will never meet him. You know, he may well be very charismatic on a one-to-one basis. I don't know. Theresa May, for example, people said that on a one-to-one basis she was very personable. But that didn't come across through the camera. She didn't have that charisma that can project itself to people who aren't meeting her and are not interacting with her. That is Starmer's main weakness. They know that. They're not going, but he has many strengths. They're not going to try and get a leader that is like the same as that, because they'll lose out. So this is why they're trapped. What they desperately want is someone like Boris Johnson, but someone who isn't tainted. They need someone who's got that charisma, but that isn't tainted by the scandals, and that ideally will not generate their own scandals in power. But who have they got? I don't know of anyone. I'm not saying they haven't got anyone like that, but I can't think who it is. It's not Michael Gove. Michael Gove has said himself. Michael Gove knows he's not charismatic. He's said as much. Matt Hancock is tainted by Partygate. Rishi Sunak is tainted by Partygate. Liz Truss actually is also. Now, again, not a lot's been made of that. It might well be that Labour are keeping that one a bit quiet until, in case she is. Theresa Coffey, I mean, she's probably not realistic anyway, but she's tainted by it. Oh, Haley there. I disagree, Phil. Oh, good. Getting people angry at people issues, even if they have zero impact on their life, is a tactic that the right has used forever. Just see Brexit immigration. Yeah, but there's a lot more people think that Brexit and immigration impacts their life, or that the EU and immigration impacted their life. People don't really, the majority of voters, when it comes down to it, don't feel threatened by trans rights. They may not particularly care enough to want to champion them, but they don't feel threatened by them either. And you could see that from the Mail on Sunday poll at the weekend, last weekend. There's no buggers interested, and they know no buggers interested. And it's not just that one poll. We know from consistent polling, it's not a key issue for people. But anyway, Biden did not have charisma, but people had enough of Trump, who had plenty of charisma. So I don't think Keir Starmer's perceived lack of charisma is bad, actually. Well, it's not terrible because of Johnson. But here's my issue: Biden was up against Trump. Absolutely, tens of millions of people turned out not to vote for Biden, not to vote Democrats, to vote for anti-Trump. Granted, Boris Johnson is not going to be fighting the next general election. Not even as an MP. He'll have resigned as an MP by then. You know, Boris Johnson is not going to be leading the Conservatives in the general election. Whoever Keir Starmer is up against for that next general election, not Boris Johnson. So we'll just have to see who it ends up being. Oh, Darren, thank you. It says, do you think large donors on both sides wield too much influence? Would we ever be able to publicly fund elections and exclude large donors? So the first answer is yes, inevitably. Why would they donate large? In theory, you could get some people donating large amounts of money just because they believe in that party and they don't want any contact or anything like that. You know, If I won the Euro millions, I won 100 million, I would throw Labour a few million a year up until the election, absolutely. And I wouldn't expect to meet any MPs about it. I won't expect anything out of it. Most people use it as an investment, if we're honest, on both sides. It's really that simple. So of course they wield too much influence. It gives them access to ministers. And even if it's not deliberately corrupt lobbying, it is lobbying, and it's behind closed doors lobbying. Would we ever be able to publicly fund elections and exclude large donors? I would hope so, but I think we're a very long way off it. You know, we need as a country to realise that politics is broken and needs fixing. And even when we come to that realisation, I think there's going to be things that people are going to agree will help fix it quick. No one's going to go for a whole smorgasbord of fixes. So in time, maybe I struggle to see how, given, you know, I mean, given that it doesn't matter if we change to a decent government next again, the media is still the media in this country, and they will still argue against all sorts of electoral reform. Anything that weakens the Conservative Party and their hold over the Conservative Party is to be fought very strongly by the mainstream media. So I find it very difficult to believe that we will get a decent electoral system even in my lifetime. And I plan on living for a fair while yet. Mr. Not Really Meat at all, thank you. It says, perhaps they should take a loss and have Keir be a plank personality so they can create a new leader. What do you mean by that? You mean the Conservatives? I don't think the Conservatives would ever, like, I don't know you're sort of trying to argue against about the risking the next election just to win the election after it. The Conservatives will never do that, even if it's tactically sound. Because you could argue if the Conservatives are onto a loser, carry on raiding the coffers, behave in the most appalling way possible for the next 2.5 years, have your general election, lose it, get rid of all the people responsible, get new people in, say you've changed, bash Labour in the media, come back in next time, have another 10 years of raiding the coffers. Gordon Bennett, Christopher. I'm going to have to donate that to someone. Oh, it was Wakeford, not Wakefield from before, sorry. Oh, that wasn't that, was that? Anyway, you still think the centre parting is a winner? What centre parting? Gabe's there saying, can you imagine the shit face that the Conservative Party will leave behind for the next government to try and sort out? Well, yeah. I mean, that's what happens all the time. And this is why, you know, if you only come in for a few years with a weak government, you won't get very much done. It could take a generation to fix everything. No one's going to suppose that Labour are going to be in power for a generation in whatever form. This is why, for me, proportional representation is the most important policy. Now, that's not to say that I want Labour to adopt it as formal policy, because not if it's a vote loser, but I need them to work towards it. You know, pull all the strategic stops out. At the end of the day, if we had proportional representation, Labour would not win majority power. It would be really maybe once a century, maybe. Happened in New Zealand. But it'd be really unusual. So they'd be in coalition most of the time, but they would be in coalition most of the time. So they would be in government most of the time. The Conservatives, in order to get into government, would have to shift back to more moderate policies. They'd have to. They'd have to drop their swivel-eyed loons. You know, so... Mark, thank you. It says, at least no Russian donations to the Conservatives for the next election. None of the front bench have much personality to replace Johnson. The front bench were picked entirely to be loyal to Johnson. Normally, if there's going to be a leader going, you would normally think to yourself, right, who amongst the front benchers is likely to replace them? That's not going to happen. I'm not saying no member of the current cabinet would replace him, but that's not likely to happen here, because they were not picked for being good political operators. They were picked specifically so they didn't outshine Boris Johnson or challenge him in any way. You know, he made a mistake with Rishi Sunak, but he's dealt with him as well. He dealt with Rishi. So, but in terms of the no Russian donations for the next election, I don't know. But it doesn't matter at this moment. They'll still get plenty of other donations because they've shown, if you chuck us a few quid, you chuck us 50 grand, we'll give you a £5 million public contract. You know, so I don't think they've got any problem with that at all. But anyway, Dec Morgan, proportional representation thinks works very well here in Ireland. We had coalition government since the 80s. We don't like to give one party too much power. No, I've noticed that. I mean, Vinny is saying we have PR in Sweden, so much better, more consensus in politics. Well, I would just say in general as well, because obviously there's PR basically almost everywhere in Europe, but the Scandinavian countries in particular do seem to have a much better connection between politics and people. Don't get me wrong, I know people in Denmark, Sweden and Finland who will all moan about their government, but there is a much stronger connection there. And they can govern much more sensibly. I don't think it's any surprise the Scandinavian countries rank highest on the happiness scale, like all the time. Solid Digital, thank you. It says, India trade deal, how Brexiteers will react to relaxed border rules with India. It's not really relaxed border rules, it's just more visas. So they'd still have to apply. But yeah, I mean, how do the racist Brexiteers react to the idea that we're replacing white workers from Europe predominantly with rather darker skinned workers from the subcontinent? So yes, that is one. And I do know there are people going on about, don't call it freedom of movement, we're not giving India freedom of movement. It's like, yeah, it's not, no one's saying it's freedom of movement, it's visas, and visas have to be applied for, but it still nonetheless means a lot more workers from India. And you know, we need them, there's no argument without it. It's not a policy I will criticise. You know, I would like us to have much easier immigration for all the sorts of workers we need. I'd also like it if the government if people in this country want, and I'm conscious I've only got a few more minutes, if people in this country, and it's perfectly reasonable to say, think, you know, what we need to do is have people in Britain doing those jobs. Great, train them for them, put money into education, let's train people in this country to do those jobs. But until we've done that, until we've got people in this country with those skills to do those jobs, we still need those jobs doing, or we miss out economically. So we need to attract people from overseas who already have those skills. It's like the Premier League, isn't it? It's all right saying, you know, and yes, we should develop more, you know, British talent in football. But at the same time, if you ain't got it, you import it. But anyway, FMG Football Mad Gamer, thank you very much. But anyway, we'll do the last couple, and then we'll come to the end. It says, to the far right wing chant, you will not replace us. You could add, they are coming over from India visa free. I mean, I don't think I would push that one too much. I think it's just a little aside, because it only works on the racist Brexiteers, but there are quite a lot of them. I think it has to be said. But we'll come to the end there. I will just again explain what we're doing for the rest of the month. So there will be another stream on Wednesday that will run very much like this one. I'll try and pick a topic. I'll have to think what might be topical next Wednesday. And it may change as we go on, but I have to put something on there for the thumbnail. I'll probably put it out on Yosa, thank you very much. Last one then, really quickly. Does the Tory party have the potential to manipulate the British public in the long term regarding Brexit, or will the coin finally drop for the majority at some point? Public seems subdued by Brexit. At some point it will have to drop. At some point, all fascist ploys fail eventually. The problem is it may take a while because the mainstream media are against it. And it also has to be said, Labour are not really opposing it as they might otherwise. Now, I'm not going to call that a tactical error because I don't know that. But Labour are not challenging Brexit strongly. So there it is. And the very last one, because I am going to end. Thank you, Williams. Says, do you think that Johnson has some grand idea? Actually, I'm just going to say no there, but I will read the rest of it. That he could still have some grand Churchillian motion that saves his political career. No. He may imagine that, but no. And Lars, thank you. Is military coup an option in the UK? No, we don't need to. Look, it's really simple. You take a pencil. You go to the ballot box. In 2 weeks' time, a load of people can get to take. Don't even have to take a pencil. You get given a pencil when you're there. Put the cross in the box that is by the name of the person that is best placed to challenge the Conservatives. That's all people have to do. We don't need a revolution. We don't need a coup. We just need people with pencils. That's all we need. Coups and revolutions are for autocracies. We're getting there, but we're not there yet. And oh my goodness, Big Zampano XXL. Thank you. Thank you for what I do. Greetings from Vienna. Danke. But anyway, we'll call it there. And I'll see you on Wednesday potentially. Thanks very much.